everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's Dr. Christine Anderson here, or Dr. Chris, as my patients affectionately call me. For those of you who don't know me and who are just joining for the first time, I am a chiropractor in Los Angeles for 30 years. And I have a specialty in pediatrics and pregnancy, but I do see whole families. I do see adults. And a lot of the stuff I learn, it's because it's happened to me. So you're going to hear a little bit about that tonight with my optimal elbow health in this series of optimal health, talking about the spine, and now we're on the extremities. So if you have missed any of those, go back and watch them. Last week, we talked about optimal shoulder health. And now today we're talking about optimal elbow health, because guess what? It's the next in line in our upper extremities. So most people really don't think that much about their elbows. This isn't something in general that, well, it's getting more and more. And especially in my world, I do see this now because more people are on computers, moms carrying kids, even positions we get into, maybe with driving even, it might not necessarily be something that's considered a sport. And the other thing that we can also sort of see this is, well, obviously with sports. And I forgot what I was going to say, but that's what happens when you do it live. But it'll come back to me as I'm talking. Okay, so just a little background with me. I do aerial arts, and that is where you're up in the air doing things like aerial silks. I do single point trapeze, or dance trapeze it's called, and I do hammock. So with a lot of what I do, I'm grabbing on, right? I've got to have good grip strength so I'm not 20 feet in the air and I lose my grip. So this is where I really started to comprehend how important elbow health is, because this can be one of those deal breakers, and it actually was for my husband. So he basically can no longer do aerial arts because of his elbows. And, a lot of times the shoulders for aerial artists or things like that, but it is definitely a real thing. And for those of you who play golf, you might have experienced golfer's elbow, or if you play a racket sport, tennis elbow, climbers, because they're using a lot of those forearm muscles. And like I said, I might see this in moms who are carrying their babies and using a lot of their upper body. But now even with computers, people are in weird situations where they're not using proper ergonomics. And so lifting that mouse and repositioning it can be an issue. But even sometimes if you're carrying something weird, or you're in some weird position for a while, your elbow actually can go out of alignment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. All right, so I talked a little bit about how elbow conditions can occur, and sometimes they can be spontaneous too. One of the things can happen too is a fall. So this actually just occurred to me. I was in Yellowstone, we were walking around, and there was a kid, I think he was like 10, and he was kind of into his mom, and he was sort of like a little whiny, and I just was like, I thought maybe he was tired of just walking around mud pits and geysers. So I said to the mom, hey, did you know there's this boiling river where the hot water meets the cold water and it mixes and it makes it just right for going in? And she's like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, he's just a little cranky because he fell and he was actually holding his arm and his wrist and it was all swollen. And she's like, yeah, I think they had taken it. It wasn't broken. That's right. They had taken him to the emergency. It wasn't broken, but he was still in a lot of discomfort. So I'm like, well, this is what I do. Do you want me to check him out? I just hate seeing a kid in pain. So he let me, I just did range of motion with his wrist, which was pretty much okay. And I said, can I just touch your elbow? And I touched his elbow, and I was messing around with it to see about the motion, and the radial head was actually out of alignment. Well, guys, your radial head, which by the way ends right here at your thumb, actually begins here at the outer part of your arm. So let me just show you what I'm talking about. And hopefully, okay, good. So there's your radius, there's your ulna. The radius, this is your thumb joint. It goes down to the thumb, and then your ulna is on the other side. So there's two bones there. So you can see if you fall and you kind of twist your arm, and actually this happened to an adult I had come in the other day, a grandma of a family. She fell, and she actually broke her forearm up near her elbow. So I didn't adjust her elbow with my hand. I actually worked more at the wrist. So you can work on the ulna or the radius from different areas of the, whether it's the beginning or the end, or we call it proximal or distal. Anyways, he let me touch it. I showed him what I wanted to do. I just gave a quick little thrust on his radial head, and he was kind of like, that's it? That's not a big deal. And we were still standing around there, and he kind of wandered off, and then we kind of reconnected later, and his mom was like, oh my God. He's like, he can't believe it. He's like, how come this feels better? Why can I move this? So this is where, when you are looking at one area of the body, even though we might be having elbow pain or pain wherever, you have to look at what's called the kinetic chain. I have to look at shoulder. I have to look at wrist. I even have to sometimes look from the feet up, because what's happening with the foundation of the feet going up through the pelvis, the spine, and then how the shoulder girdle, remember from last week, how it's connected to our rib cage. So how everything is moving down the line. And in particular, if you're doing a sport or any activity and you're doing it repetitively, are you doing it properly? Are there any bad habits that you've gotten into that's putting stress and strain on your elbow parts? So let me show you that, because we have these muscles of our forearm and the muscles of the arm that actually connect. So I just want to kind of show you this. And this part here is actually the humerus. This is the arm. There's the elbow right there. So it shows you how the biceps goes into part of the elbow. And then this one is showing the back part of the arm where the triceps goes into the elbow. And then this is the part of the, let me just read that there because I can't. So that now we're looking at the forearm muscles, and we're looking at how they connect. Like the pronator teres is the one that rotates, and it shows you how it goes all the way down to the wrist, and the tendons go into the fingers. So you have to think about the activities that you're doing. If you're playing a sport, make sure that your technique is right. So getting some coaching and training your body to have those positive movements. Same thing with the mouse. Don't lift it up, slide it, or use a stylus. Make sure your situation's ergonomically set up. And I do have a whole video on an ergonomic setup for your computer so that you're not straining one part of your body or the other. So this is why this elbow really, it's sort of stuck in the middle of the shoulder or the wrist, and it's sort of that connector. So we have to look at all of those muscles and that kinetic chain, because a weak link anywhere along that chain is going to affect another link, which could affect what's going on with your elbow. Now, a little bit, you will hear of things like medial epicondylitis or lateral epicondylitis. What's your epicondyles? There's the medial one, there's the lateral one. It's talking about medials towards your body, laterals away, and epicondyle is part of the elbow system, of the bony system. So it's just the muscles attaching there. Itis means inflammation. They get inflamed because you are doing something improperly. That is different than tendinosis. Tendinosis is sort of tendinitis to a chronic or nth degree. So you might have had an inflamed joint, you haven't taken care of it properly, you're not addressing the cause of it, you keep doing what you're doing, and it might turn into something called tendinosis. And that's a chronic degenerative condition from poor healing and poor collagen deposition as the body's trying to deal with this inflammation. So this is why whenever there's anything going on in your body, you want to really make sure that you are getting it addressed right away, and especially by somebody who might understand the mechanics of what you're doing. So sometimes as a chiropractor, I have to take my patients through what is the actual action that they're doing. And there's even chiropractors out there that specialize in sports. They specialize in golf or tennis. For me, my specialty is moms who like kids around, right? And this is also, there's something actually called nursemaid's elbow for children. This is how ancient this terminology is, but it would be, how when kids are starting to walk and their arms are above their head, and you've got, I guess, a nursemaid, so it wasn't even a mom, a nursemaid holding the hand, helping this child walk, and maybe they pulled it wrong, and the elbow becomes subluxated or irritated, and that subluxation is when those bones come a little bit out of alignment. Not completely out of joint, it's not a dislocation, but they just are not moving properly in their ranges of motion. And this is where chiropractic comes in, and it can be a quick little simple adjustment and can make a huge difference in your arm. Because if you do not have those bones in place, especially that radial head, these two bones rotate around each other. So the ulna and the radius rotate. This is why we can do this motion, right? We can do a twisting motion. But if those bones are not in alignment, anything, you won't be able to open doors, you won't be able to open jars. Anything you want to do with a twisting action is not going to be good. Also, extremes of like flexion, that's bending forward, or extension might cause issues because of where those two bones end in the wrist. So you might have wrist issues on top of it. All right, so the problem with tendinosis is that the muscles move the bones and are attached to the bones through tendons. And what happens is if you do something too much, or you increase what you're doing too quickly. So let's say I was doing an aerial class once or twice a week, and then I went to every single day with no gradual inclination. Then I'm going to be putting a load on my muscles. My muscles will get strong, but they're going to pull on those tendons, and those tendons take a little bit more time to acclimatize to what is going on. So this is a problem for people in sports that use the forearm muscles for the elbow. This can happen, by the way, with anything, but it does tend to be an issue for the elbows in these types of sports and situations. Okay, so how do you deal with this? Well, number one, you want to make sure, you want to try and not get into the position of having your elbow in a compromised way. So you want to keep strong. You want to make sure your muscles are balanced, which is why I'm going through every single part of the body, because you don't want to, let's say, overdo your forearm flexors and forget about your extensors, right? But if you're having a particular issue like a medial epicondylitis, that's that inner part from golfing or from climbing or aerial arts, then you're going to want to actually work this forearm bundle. And this is where a chiropractor who's knowledgeable in this can help. But basically, in general, you're going to do something called eccentric exercise. And what that means is you're going to actually work the muscles on the way down. Okay, so what does that mean? For instance, if I want to help these muscles get stronger, I'm going to passively take my hand into flexion, I'm gonna have a weight in my hand, starting with maybe like 5 kilograms or even less. And then with my hand, so you wanna keep your arm out, right? You don't wanna, well, you can keep it bent, but with the weight, I'm gonna just slowly let it come into extension. So you can imagine I'm using these front part of the muscles to decelerate how that weight goes down. And then when I get here, look, I'm engaging more of my extensors and I'm stretching my flexors. So it's a very comprehensive way to use muscles without straining them, because to put a weight in your hand and take it into flexion uses way more. So we want to use the muscle, but at a decreased capacity to try and retrain that strength, and you do a lot of repetitions. So I may at some point actually do a video on this eccentric exercise so that you will see it. Why not, right? That's why you should subscribe, because I never know when I'm going to do these things. I spontaneously will have a moment and the right setting, because some things require certain setups. And I'll be like, let me do that eccentric forearm exercise so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Well, if you're subscribed, you're going to know when that happens and you will get a notification. So that is the beauty of subscribing to my channel, because my life is unpredictable. I do it every Tuesday, but after that, who knows? All right. And then you also want to do stretches. So again, I'm going to come back in a video at some point and just talk in general about stretches you can do for your elbow health and some exercises that you can do as well. So you want to get down to the root cause of the problem if there's an issue. You want to make sure you're strengthening, stretching. You want to work on your posture. You want to work on your shoulders. You want to modify your lifestyle if there is something bugging you. So let's say you're carrying a child on one side all the time, switch it up, or figure out another way to carry them if it keeps irritating your elbow. And we talked about working with your sport and making sure that you're doing things properly. For aerial arts, a lot of times we're using too much of this forward core, and we want to use more of the back to engage there. So that changes the whole dynamic of the shoulder, which affects the elbow, right? So you can eliminate those negative patterns and habits, start replacing it with positive ones as you retrain how you're moving. Deep tissue massage is essential. You need to work the forearm bundles. And remember also those biceps attached to the elbow. So at least once a week, I have somebody giving me 10 minutes of eye-watering deep tissue work. I wouldn't even call it massage. It's deep tissue work in the vicinity of my elbow, especially at those forearm bundles there. Oof, let me tell you. If you have an acute irritation, you might use a forearm support or something like kinesio taping. You want to always make sure you warm up before you're using your elbow if you're doing some sort of strenuous activity, especially. And guys, nothing replaces getting your elbows adjusted, okay? You can do all the stretches and the strength and the deep tissue, etc. But if that elbow joint is out of place, nothing is going to change that until you have a chiropractor put it back into alignment. So that is the bottom line on that. All right. Thank you for joining me tonight. Next week, we're going to continue with the wrist, and I'll dive in a little bit deeper on that aspect, but this all ties together. It all works together. So if one thing's bugging you, then probably another is being stressed as well. So I usually check everything down the line. All right, like this if you liked what I have to say. And like I said, subscribe when you want to know when I'm doing new videos. Share this with your friends because they deserve to have happy elbows too. And have a great week. And here's to an optimal life and optimal health. Bye.